Today, the 39th match of the T20 World Cup will be played between New Zealand and Papua New Guinea at the Brian Charles Lara Cricket Academy in Tarouba, Trinidad and Tobago. Before discussing today's match, let's recap yesterday's thrilling game between Ireland and Pakistan. Both teams were already out of the tournament. One was playing for pride, the other was playing for prejudice. But that's how the story is. They fought hard. Ireland batted first and scored 106 runs. Pakistan, led by captain Babar Azam, struggled but managed to chase down the target, winning by 3 wickets. This morning, Bangladesh played against Nepal, scoring 106 runs while batting first. Nepal fell short and could only manage barely 85 runs. But that's all right. No love lost there. And Bangladesh secured a 21-run victory and cemented their place in the Super 8. In another match today, Sri Lanka faced the Netherlands. Now, this is important. Sri Lanka posted an impressive 201 runs and Netherlands were all out for 118, giving Sri Lanka an 83-run victory. Who can think of scoring 200 runs in today's context? It's completely unthinkable. Well, I've got 3 of the best voices of the game joining me. Tatinda Ziambe from Harare Sports Club right now, sitting in his car in the parking lot. I don't know what he's doing. Same Noel David, the former Indian cricketer, and Paul Dinette. I'd like to welcome Paul Dinette first. Paul, would you like to take a go at the first question? And that is, who scores 200 runs in today's context? I mean, isn't it bewildering? Your views?
Well, yeah, it's been such a strange World Cup where I was looking at the Pakistan game and thinking Ireland's got to be half a chance of winning this game. And I thought, that's crazy. That the total that they got is so small. To even contemplate winning that with that total is bizarre. But that's what this World Cup has done. The nature of the pitches has meant that big scores have gone out the window. Yeah, so Sri Lanka, it's all a little bit too little too late for them. But it was kind of a little flashback to what T20 cricket is normally like. Hopefully, as we move into the Super 8s, we do get a few more high-scoring games, because I actually had an American reach out to me on social media who said he'd never watched cricket before. He got interested in cricket when he saw the Pakistan-United States game. He cheered United States on in the game against India, and he's now a cricket fan and watching it. And I said to him, hopefully you'll get to see towards the rest of the tournament just what T20 cricket can be like. You've seen some close games. It'd be good to see a few games with some sixes. So maybe he was watching the Sri Lankan innings.
Well, you seem to be having a pretty interesting times being either an American or talking to Americans. I mean, what is your context? Have they understood the part of cricket, or they're still lagging behind?
Well, this guy was really into it, and I read a few articles from American sports journalists, and I think that the general consensus has been that those who have actually been aware that the World Cup is on, those who are sort of not from a traditional cricketing background, have been impressed by it. The guy from the New York newspaper who went to the game between India and Pakistan absolutely loved it. And he wasn't just saying that. You could tell he genuinely had a great time. He thought that the crowd atmosphere, the banter, the interplay between the Indian and the Pakistan fans was superb, and he really loved the experience. But I think that the average American is probably completely unaware that this World Cup is on. But that was the same with football not that long ago. America hosted the 1994 World Cup, and the average American didn't know that it was on. But as the years have gone by, it's still not a mainstream sport there, but Major League Soccer is quite a success. And I could see Major League Cricket very gently making those same sorts of strides, and that cricket could carve out at least some sort of a niche in the American sporting landscape.
Well, and Aussie very eloquently talking about an American pursuit of cricketing dreams. We'll shift our focus to an Indian player. Noel, are you happy with the way Nepal is coming up? Are you happy with the way Afghanistan, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh have come together as a strength? Your views?
Yeah, it's quite astonishing to see these minor teams, growing in stature. If you see Nepal, who would have surprised South Africa nearly, and they could have easily beaten Bangladesh if they had batted well. They fielded well, they bowled well. Half of this thing they have done superb, but when it came to batting, I think they collapsed. But on route, they are climbing the stairs very nicely, slow and steady. They are getting there. If you see even the US team, they are competing with the big teams now. And and they're giving them that fight, which no one thinks about. We all thought Nepal is a side where they come from a small little country where there's not much cricket played. But if you see as they grew in stature, first there was under 19. Then from under 19 they went on to the to make this country team. And I feel that each team which comes into in the near future, if you look at other associate member teams, I think there will be a big surprises in near future, and it will be a threat to the other superior teams which will be competing in the World Cups when down the line in another 5 years.
Well, Noel, that's an interesting point you make. We'll also shift back to an interesting point with Tatinda Ziambe. India, sorry, I beg your pardon. India travels to Zimbabwe in a fortnight's time. Tatinda, as a fan, do you rue the fact that your team hasn't made it to the World Cup and you have Namibia, the Omans of the world have made it and they're making rapid progress? Your views?
I think it just goes to show you perhaps like the way that the game is run in said countries. Now, I think in yesterday's show, I made mention of the fact that we saw the likes of Afghanistan and Bangladesh. Like 10 years ago in Zimbabwean circles, for you to have said that we would lose to Bangladesh or Afghanistan on a regular basis, you would have been locked out of the room. But credit to the cricket boards in those particular countries. In particular with Afghanistan, I think they really started with that team, I think, that won the Under-19 World Cup, and that really just propelled them through. And I think when you're seeing something with like Nepal, and I know I mentioned it like a few days ago, whatever's going on in the country, still they're able to put out a competitive team at that, not just like a team that can perhaps just be part of the numbers, but an actual competitive team. So I think that's where Zimbabwe now, we know we almost sheepishly have like that 4-member status, but in reality, we're struggling against a lot of the associate sides because of just a poor running of the game in the country. That also can come down to certain things about. Yes, go on.
Ironically, you guys have the best coaches in the world. When you look at Andy Fowler, yes. You've got the best coach in the world, and he's most sought after. Considering that he's going elsewhere and not building up the status of Zimbabwe, does it hurt you a bit?
Oh, it definitely does. And it goes specifically to what I told you about the administration. If there was an environment that was conducive for a coach to really come out, sort of formulate his plan in terms of how the type of cricket that he wants to play, the types of players that he wants to build up, whether that's going to be a long-term project or something in the medium term. It's you just don't quite get that with Zimbabwean cricket at the moment. And look, I don't want to make it doom and gloom with Zimbabwe, because I know the question overall is about some of these sides like Nepal, and that's where I really have to take my hat off with them.
I'm just going to stick to Nepal for a minute and drag Noel David into the discussion. Noel, hypothetically, just imagine if Nepal would have defeated South Africa, if Nepal would have defeated the other two teams as well. Just imagine the pandemonium in Kathmandu. What do you think?
I think it would have been a superb celebration being done there. I think everyone would have been on a dance floor in Kathmandu. The traditional dance, all the dances would have been done. People would have been celebrated. People would have been, there would have been a huge party going on in Kathmandu. And this place would have been rated as, I think they would have been the god of that country, because if they are qualified for this Super 8, I think Nepal would have been flying more than what they could have expected. And I feel they can do it down the line in next 2 years, because as Tatandu has rightly said, Nepal is growing in structure, from where they started to where they are now. It's a huge difference. They have covered all the margins. They have covered all the errors and the mistakes, what they have done initially. And now they are, into a zone where they can compete against a superior team and give them a scare, and which they have shown in this World Cup. which have against South Africa and Bangladesh nearly. I think down the line, I think more other associate member teams will become stronger and stronger looking at the format of this game. I think they will get the hang of it, idea of it, and I think they will implement and have a new line coming up into their cricketing skills and development in their own country.
Well, that's very aptly put. In fact, in today's Sunday Times, Michael Atherton also spoke about it, that how shorter format is getting newer teams to come into the play and get their name and get their identity established here. Well, looking at today's match, the New Zealand will play their final game against Papua New Guinea at Brian Charles Lara Stadium. Both teams are out of the race for the Super 8. In the previous match, the New Zealand defeated Uganda by 9 wickets, while Papua New Guinea lost to Afghanistan by 7 wickets. This World Cup has been challenging for the new New Zealand team. Missing the semi-finals for the first time in a decade of batting has been difficult on the Brian Charles Lara Stadium. Well, the team's often failing to reach 100 runs. If PNG bats first, they'll face a tougher challenge. In the last match of this ground, New Zealand bowled out Uganda for just 40 runs. Well, joining me are three guests who've been the great voices of our game since the time the World Cup Cricit Predicta has started. Noel David. Noel David, what do you make of New Zealand's miserable outing in this T20 World Cup?
It's really sad to see such a team to just bow out of the T20 World Cup, because this is the first time that they have not been able to qualify to the Super 8. As is on every event of the ICC, they have been the #1 team. They have always qualified. They have always been at the top of the game. But this time, I don't know what really has happened to them. I think they have not clicked together. But this is how cricket is. This is an unpredictable game. Sometimes a team which is not at the best does qualify, and the team which is well known in the world doesn't. And that's the great example of New Zealand. And I feel really sorry, because they are I love that country because they play the cricket very hard. They are fighters. They take the cricket seriously. They have a superb captain called Kane Williamson. He's always backed his team whenever it's necessary. They've been the world champions of Test series. Their semi-finals of the ODI, and they have been a team which is always in the zone. And it's sad to see them bow out of this T20. I hope they get back very soon, because ICC Championship is coming up, the Champions Trophy. I think we will see them in.
Paul Dinette, Papua New Guinea, you've got Tony Ura, 1633 runs, Asad Wala, Charles Zamini, Sigbau. What do you make of this team, since they are geographically a little closer than Australia as compared to India?
It's an interesting point that you make, because Asad Wala, actually the captain of Papua New Guinea, kind of made a plea to the Australian Prime Minister with the political situation is in Australia at the moment. It's quite interesting, because Australia is seeking to fund a Papua New Guinean rugby league side to actually enter our national competition. There's a sort of a joint governmental effort. And, Papua New Guineans love their rugby league. That's their kind of #1 sport. But Asad Wala is making the point to the Australian Prime Minister, don't forget we've got a cricket team as well. And, they had they scared the West Indies in the first game of this World Cup. They are another nation. We're talking about Nepal and other nations that are on the rise. Australia has not always done the best by the smaller nations. It's been many, many years since we've played. I think it's been 21 years since Bangladesh has been invited out here for one winter only. Unlike India, who do give them the credit, they travel around and they play the developing nations. Australia, sometimes because the battle for supremacy in this country was so hard with so many sports that we kind of get very selfish. We should definitely look to helping Papua New Guinea in the coming years, because if we can add another team, I think it's a glorious phase that cricket could be entering where the T20 World Cup could genuinely get to. I think I said it in the show the other day. Imagine if we could have 32 nations with 8 groups of 4 and just play it exactly like the Football World Cup has been. And the whole argument that people used to always say, oh, cricket, it's only played by about 10 nations, that's changing all the time. And it's very exciting. And yeah, Papua New Guinea should not be left behind.
Interesting point you make. But why is there a big discrepancy when you talk about teams touring to the other parts of the world? Is it because of the ICC calendar alone, or the resentment from the top 4 teams to travel into newer areas? I mean, we remember there used to be a time when India used to travel to Kenya and Zimbabwe very frequently. Now it has stopped. Your views?
Well, I think from an Australian point of view, it's, as I said, that cricket is definitely a massive sport in Australia, but rugby league and Australian rules football are the 2 really, really big dominant sports that dominate the calendar kind of for 9 or 10 months of the year. Then in the summer, cricket really flourishes. And so those 2 sports are always getting all the funding and doing really, really well. So and basketball is on the rise, soccer is on the rise in this country. If during summer Australia says, okay, we will help out a lesser nation and schedule some prime time matches against the lesser nation, the worry is that it will actually harm cricket in Australia, because the casual fan will switch and watch the basketball. The casual fan will switch and watch the A-League soccer, and the rugby league and the Aussie rules are about to start around the corner. Next thing you know, cricket has suffered a bloody nose and has taken a step backwards. So cricket in Australia almost needs to be selfish because it's constantly in that battle. But as a result, we don't help the lesser nations at all. It's shameful that we don't help them more.
Shameful. Well, Tatinda, we want to ask you another question on the Papua New Guinea's recent form. Could you just take us through exactly what the team looks like? What is the balance, or it has been off your radar?
I didn't quite get that, Sunil. Could you just repeat?
I said in today's context between Papua New Guinea versus the New Zealand, do you think
yes,
it stands even to be discussed in detail, or it's a foregone conclusion? New Zealand is going to come in, just take over and walk back home with little pride? Or do you see some discussion, important points, because this is a low-scoring pitch?
I will say that New Zealand are obviously heavy favourites. Because look, Papua New Guinea, no secret, this World Cup, they haven't won a single game. Yes, their first game, they made a decent showing of it. I think perhaps where the victory, perhaps that Papua New Guinea perhaps might have had, 1, they made it to the World Cup. 2, they were able to, try and match themselves up against some of the world's best teams, as I'm sure you've kind of seen them. Because I think with the likes of, I know someone perhaps like Asad Vela, perhaps, someone of that nature, he's kind of a bit long in the tooth now. They're about 36 years of age. So they're also kind of in a, if I could almost call it that, it's a sort of nexus point where they've had a generation of cricketers who got them to this point. And I think maybe trying to piggyback off of the point that Paul Dennett said, they're now trying to look for ways to continue to grow the game so it just doesn't perhaps kind of like go back and forth from that stage. So I think New Zealand, definitely favorites. I think Papua New Guinea, it's just going to be perhaps just a question of, okay, can they make it competitive? And I think that's perhaps what we can perhaps look forward to tonight in that game as it pertains to that.
Well, now we go on to our last part of our discussion, and this is to Neol David. Neol, the Super 8 teams are decided: Australia, India, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. In Group 2, we have South Africa, West Indies, England, and Americas. India plays on Afghanistan on the 20th. On the 22nd, it's Bangladesh. And on the 24th, it's Australia. So is it a gradual problem for India as they progress in this game?
Before this, I was talking to Paul Dennett and Tando. I said the first game itself will set the tone of that group against Afghanistan.
Yes.
That will show if India, if there's a surprise in that game. If, for example, I'm saying just if Afghanistan beats India, then playing against Australia becomes a pressure. Playing against Bangladesh also becomes because you have to beat the other teams continuously so that, you get that chance to get into the semifinals. Because it's not an easy group. It's a death group for us. And India can't take anything easily. They have to be on their toes. They have to plan well against Afghanistan,
Right.
because I always rated Afghanistan as a team with a dynamo pocket. They are dangerous when it's given on their day. They can surprise you with things which we will be on a back foot.
Well,
and I think they know it.
If I were to paraphrase it, it says that the actual work for India starts from the first match against Afghanistan. Well, that's all we had time for.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.